Orion in the Dark is an all-new Dreamworks animated film released to Netflix, directed by Sean Charmatz. It follows a young boy named Orion who struggles with severe anxiety on almost every level about every single situation. His biggest fear being the dark. And eventually Orion ends up meeting the actual living personification of the darkness, as well as various other beings that represent other parts of the night. And in the process, Orion embarks on a quest in order to conquer his fears. So you might be wondering, why the hell did I watch a movie like this, much less make a YouTube video reviewing it, aside from the views, of course? And that's because, funny enough, if you didn't already know, this movie is written by fucking Charlie Kaufman. I think I mentioned in the past that I'm actually a really huge fan of Charlie Kaufman. He's made a lot of my favorite movies of all time, actually. Whether that be from a directing or just merely a writing level, he's probably my favorite screenwriter of all time, not even exaggerating there. So when I hear he has an animated kids movie coming out that he wrote, even if he didn't direct it, I'm still super excited, considering that a lot of his other movies that he didn't direct, he still just has the strong auteur-like stamp on it because his writing is just that recognizable and striking. So much so that won him an Oscar with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. However, this isn't Kaufman's first venture into the Dreamworks animated realm, as I guess he was somewhat of a script doctor for Kung Fu Panda 2 of all things. It's just one of the weirdest pieces of trivia. But I always thought of Kung Fu Panda 2 as something he kind of helped out with simply to make money, because this man unfortunately struggles to get a job a lot of the time. And I think that's because his work doesn't really follow the mainstream form of storytelling. A lot of his work is very esoteric, very self-reflective, kind of talks about a lot of difficult subject matter. So I don't blame him for taking on sort of a cash-grabby project every now and then. I mean, the dude's gotta eat. But I kind of assumed that Orion in the Dark would be just another one of those for him. However, I thought this was actually a really great movie, and it actually surprisingly has a lot of very noticeable Kaufmanisms throughout. I know a lot of animated family films tend to throw in a lot of dark jokes here and there for the adult audiences watching it with their kids, but none of them really go as far as I'd say Orion in the Dark go. I shit you not, there is a joke about fucking chloroform in this movie. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, it doesn't feel out of place because Charlie Kaufman's writing style is there and it is present and it is super smart and engaging, and it kind of goes to some unexpected places that you don't typically see in kids films. You see Orion literally struggling with existential dread and talking about a lot of really dark philosophical concepts, to the point where I wouldn't be shocked if some parents were kind of pissed off about some of the content in this film. I'm in no way saying that I'm against that sort of content being in a kids film. I think it's important for kids to maybe start asking certain heavy philosophical questions at a young age. But right at the beginning of the movie, Orion literally says there is nothing after you die, and even goes on a monologue talking about how us as human beings can't really understand what nothing truly is. So I can see some Jesus freaks parents maybe getting a little pissed off about that. That being said, I don't think this movie is quite a home run necessarily, and it's probably my least favorite Charlie Kaufman written film that I've seen, because there are elements of this movie where I can't tell if it's full on parodying Pixar and their tendency to anthropomorphize certain aspects of life and be like, oh look, elements are living beings and the elements can't match. Oh no, what's gonna happen? Or in the case of Orion in the Dark, parodying Pixar, it's kind of taking jabs at Inside Out, and the very concept of all these different night beings reminded me a lot of Inside Out specifically. And funny enough, Charlie Kaufman's previous animated film Anomalisa ran against Inside Out at the Academy Awards for Best Animated Picture. And in a lot of interviews, Charlie Kaufman kind of talked about how ridiculous it was pairing up a movie like Anomalisa with a film like Inside Out, because they have entirely different goals and are on entirely different spectrums of filmmaking. So parts of this movie, I couldn't tell if it was making fun of that or if it was an American fiction type scenario where he was purposely writing an animated kids movie with that same boring, overused concept. Because there's even a scene in the movie where Orion is watching an animated show on TV and he's criticizing the fact that they're doing that approach. So the movie seems fully self-aware about it, but that doesn't change the fact that once it starts to follow those night characters, it does become a bit less interesting because it doesn't quite feel as creative as the rest of the film. It does kind of feel almost intentionally like a carbon copy of something like Inside Out in those moments. And I'm not crazy about a lot of the voice acting choices in this movie, and I don't think Kaufman had anything to do with that. I forget which actor they got to voice the Dark, but he kind of sounds like he's doing this wannabe Seth Rogen voice impression thing, and it was really distracting, and I felt like it kind of took away from that character. And that character is also a major part of this movie. He's in most of it along with Orion. In fact, a lot of the heart of this movie is kind of built around their relationship. Yet I couldn't help but find his voice somewhat annoying. It didn't kill the movie for me necessarily, but it's definitely an issue whenever one of the lead characters' voices doesn't quite match. I also really don't love the animation here, and it's, I would say, a notch above most American animated films, but I really do have an issue with the style in most American animated movies, because they all seem to follow this very generic, overused CG look. And while there is a little bit of personality to be found in Orion and the Dark, like a lot of it is colored with these paint-like textures, and it looks kind of cool sometimes. There might be one or two scenes that were really good on a visual level. But overall, I really just couldn't get into the look of this movie. And again, I don't think that's Kaufman's fault. I think he wrote the best possible movie he could have given this circumstance. It just seems like everything around it seemed to be making a more conventional animated movie. But that being said, this is a Charlie Kaufman script, so it elevates those elements of filmmaking to a different level, making this overall a really great, fun, and surprisingly deep watch. While I have issues with the movie, I think that what it says about storytelling is really important, especially for a kid to watch. This is the kind of movie that I watch and feel like I want to write something immediately. It has that level of inspiration, so I can only imagine what it might do for a kid watching it. I thought the ending of the movie was really great, and it resolved in just a honestly perfect, really touching way. So yeah, certainly not Charlie Kaufman's best film. That being said, it's really great, and I think you should definitely watch it, especially with your kids. This is easily the best animated movie I've seen since Across the Spider-Verse, and it's easily the best movie I've seen in 2024, so that's not saying much because we're just at the beginning of February now. But yeah, overall I had a really great time with Orion in the Dark, and I would give it a strong 8 out of 10.